Chair, to you and the committee members, thanks very much. I unfortunately have to leave for a doctor's appointment. So, you know, there is a slogan that there's a war against corruption in our country. I looked at the SIU slogan that says striking against corruption. You, Chair, said, why does it take so long and why do cases take so long? That's what the public want to know. We've heard the stories about Stalingrad tactics. I've also heard that the NPA also itself uses Stalingrad tactics. And I hear plausible sounding reasons. Some of them I heard 2 months ago when the NDPP was here about attracting skills, retaining skills, all of that. We hear them, they sound plausible. But I can't reconcile the plausibility of those stories with the claims in the Justice Committee this week of how successful we are. You yourself are saying we don't see NPA prosecutions. But let me go to my question. Let's use one case, the Omotoso case. We've been told here that there's a mechanism that's being developed to track cases. We hear about reviews, all that kind of thing. In the Omotoso case, the original prosecutors were removed from the case for incompetence. Was that taken under review? Was their removal taken under review? Because what confounds me is they've been reappointed to the Fort Hare case, which involves massive corruption, supply chain management infiltration, and assassinations. We know that the Omotoso case was botched by the second team, botched by 2 teams from the NPA. But the first team was reappointed. By whom? Was it taken under review? What were the consequences of that review? Because if our reviews are not giving us an insight into why we fail, we'll continue failing. Thanks, Chair.
All right, can we just deal with that? And I think your question is basically what was wrong with them and why are you now confident that they can prosecute basically a financial, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll deal with that. On the Omotoso matter, we have made extensive public comment on this, extensive, in various fora. We were also called to Parliament, the Portfolio Committee, where we gave very, very detailed explanations. I can give those explanations again today because I think they are important, but we've made a lot of, we wanted the public to understand what happened. So these questions are being raised now, and I'm certainly going to deal with it again. So on the issue of the prosecutors that were changed originally, and I'll deal with the link to the Fort Hare matter as well. Those prosecutors, there were allegations at the outset that they had acted improperly and were influencing the witnesses in the Omotoso matter. Because of that, the team was indeed changed. The investigation into the conduct of those prosecutors at that time did not start immediately for the reason that in order to proceed against them, to investigate their conduct, we needed of necessity to have the evidence of the witnesses themselves because the allegations were that they were being improperly influenced. So the Deputy National Director Advocate de Kock at the time, working with the DPP in the division, Mr. Madolo, decided that we will delay that investigations until the victims were already going through, testifying in this matter was not easy for them. So we will delay that start of that investigation until the witnesses had completed testimony. And so that investigation, in fact, commenced last year in August. So that team that was changed, and I'll deal with the link to the Fort Hare matter in a minute. And then the judge in that matter was very critical of the new team that actually prosecuted that matter. And the judge in the matter acquitted Omotoso, criticizing the conduct of the prosecutors relating to, for example, cross-examination, relating to certain evidence that was not led. So with regard to that aspect, which is the new team, immediately after that, I appointed a team of very experienced prosecutors from outside of the Eastern Cape to look into the transcript of that matter, to consider whether the conduct of the prosecutors, whether the judge is justified, does it require disciplinary, does it require training, what was the challenges. So I'm expecting that report to be on my table very, very soon. That's the second aspect. And then we decided that we needed to appeal this matter. And this is where I would urge colleagues and the country not to judge a matter before the appeal process. An example that I give is the New Lane matter. That matter, the NPA was scathingly criticized by the judge, who referred to a comedy of errors and lots of other comments. That decision was just last week overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal, who in fact criticized the judge for the way the matter had been dealt with, and the prosecutors have been vindicated. So in the Omotoso matter, all I'm saying is, let us allow the legal process to unfold. We have taken the matter on appeal. The judge in that matter has actually initiated a very novel process, which we have never dealt with before, where when a state appeals, we appeal only on points of law. So in this case, we required of the judge to clarify her factual findings. So quite unusually, the judge has now asked that we actually argue this matter in court, which has never been done before. So we are trying to figure out how it's only once the judge clarifies the factual findings that we will be able to properly outline the legal basis for our appeal. So that process is unfolding, and we will keep the committee informed about that process. The other point that Honorable Trollip raises is about the same prosecutor who was removed that was then involved in the Fort Hare matter. You're correct. And the minute that was brought to my attention, I spoke to Mr. Madolo and asked him exactly that question. How is it that the prosecutor, who was seriously criticized in one matter, is now involved in a very, very high-profile matter? He was then immediately removed from the team. So these are issues that the DPP and I've asked him for a report, and I'm not sure if we've got Advocate Mznyati sitting behind, whether we've got, the very question I ask is, how is it possible that a prosecutor criticized in one matter is then put in charge of a very, very high-profile matter? I do want to also say that, maybe I shouldn't say this. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But I hope that I've asked, and really, the word that Honorable Trollip used is that the prosecutors botched this matter. Now, I would urge that we wait until the appeal to then decide whether the prosecutors in fact botched the matter, like the New Lane matter, where the prosecutors were seriously criticized. And of course, we do lose cases. There's not a 100% conviction rate. That is the nature of our democracy. It's the nature of our justice system. It's the strength of our justice system. And then it's the issue of the Omotoso matter itself. I want to say that this particular case was a serious setback in our country's fight against sexual and gender-based violence. And with regard to addressing sexual and gender-based violence cases generally in the NPA, we have an extremely, extremely good record of convictions, of support to victims. And sadly, this one, a very important case, has actually meant that all the good work is forgotten, and this one very important case is the one that judges whether the NPA is able to deal with these matters. So I don't know how much of detail you want me to go into with regard to the sexual and gender-based violence statistics, but I would just leave it at that. And if there's anything I haven't touched on, I'm happy to engage further. Thank you. Thank you.